1. The structure of the books of the Old Testament according to the Hebrew canon. 1. The Law, Torah, Genesis, the beginning, all produced by the Word of God, Genesis 1:3. Israel as a family, Genesis 15:1. B. Exodus, history. Israel emerging from families and tribes to a nation, called Hebrews according to their tongue. C. Leviticus, worship. Jehovah in the midst, he, Israel's God, and they, his people. B. Numbers, history. Israel now a nation, numbered and blessed as such. 23 and 24. A. Deuteronomy, the end, all depending on the word of Jehovah. Israel regarded as in the land. 2. The prophets, Nebiim. A. Joshua, the Lord of all the earth, giving possession of the land, government under priests. B. Judges, Israel forsaking and returning to God, losing and regaining their position in the land. No king. Bethlehem, failure under the priests. C. Samuel, man's king rejected, God's king, David, established. D. Kings, decline and fall under the kings. D. Isaiah, final blessing under God's king. C. Jeremiah, human kings rejected, David's righteous branch raised up. B. Ezekiel, God forsaking Israel and returning in glory to say forever of his land and city, Jehovah Shammah. A. Minor prophets, the Lord of all the earth, giving restored possession of the land and foretelling final and unending possession. 3. The Psalms, Ketubim writings. A. Psalms, Tehillim, praises, God's purposes and counsels as to his doings in the future. B. Proverbs, i.e., rules, words which govern or rule man's life, God's moral government set forth. C. Job, the end of the Lord, shown in Satan's defeat and the saints' deliverance from tribulation. D. Canticles, virtue rewarded, read by the Jews at Passover, the feast which commemorates the deliverance from Pharaoh, the Jews' oppressor. E. Ruth, the stranger gathered in to hear of and share in God's goodness in redemption, read at Pentecost, which commemorates God's goodness in the land. F. Lamentations, alas, the record of Israel's woes, read at the fast of the 9th of Abib. E. Ecclesiastes, the preacher, the people collected to hear of man's vanity, read at the Feast of Tabernacles, which commemorates God's goodness in the wilderness. D. Esther, virtue rewarded, read at the Feast of Purim, which commemorates the deliverance from Haman, the Jews' enemy. C. Daniel, God's judgment. Here are shown the final defeat of Antichrist and the deliverance out of the Great Tribulation. B. Ezra and Nehemiah, men who governed and ruled God's people in the resettlement in the land. A. Chronicles, Debre Hayamim, words of the days, or God's purposes and counsels as to Israel's doings in the past and until the time of the end.